Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome to the Sports Court. I am Gregory Beatty alongside Eddie Cox, who is back in the building this week. Missed him last week, of course. Had BT, had my guy Brett Thompson in here. Great friend of the show. Really appreciate him coming in here last week. Look forward to seeing him again in the very near future. Hey, Eddie, welcome back, my brother. Tuesday evening. Great Tuesday evening. Not as hot as it usually is, but it's still nice and humid out there, man. And I tell you what, we have a lot going on in the sports world. Hey, Serena lost today. Serena Williams lost today. And her first match back since what? An entire year? Singles, as far as singles are concerned. She lost today to Miss Tan. What is her name? From France. But her last name is Tan. So I'm sure you'll be hearing more about her very soon, because this is her first appearance at Wimbledon, and congratulations to her for beating the great Serena Williams. But Serena, again, who's probably the best of all time, we all know that she's coming off a year layoff, so I'm sure she's going to, you know how much of a competitor she is, I'm sure she's going to look at that as something that can propel her to work even harder to get back after having that baby and get back and really get at the age of 40. It's going to be tough, but she probably still feels that she has a championship or two in her repertoire. And I also tell you this, of course, there's a lot, the NBA draft. I definitely want to get Eddie's take on the NBA draft. The Houston Rockets taking Jabari Smith. What a surprise that was, Eddie, a big-time surprise. And also, of course, as far as baseball is concerned, you have Brantley for the Astros. Now he's out on the disabled list, or the IL, for the next 10 days, Eddie, with the right shoulder, some shoulder discomfort. I'll say that. So we'll definitely talk about that in a second. Me and Eddie are big-time Astros fans for sure. And I'll tell you this, my guy Bryce Harper, he's out with a fractured thumb. Happened this past weekend. So the Phillies. So now I'm an Astros fan. But of course, I'm a Bryce Harper fan as well. So I would have loved to see him have team success after winning an MVP last year. But it is what it is. Now he has to sit out. He's taking the option of surgery. So he may even miss the entire season. So now it's all Astros. I'm just being honest. It's all Astros right now. So Harper, I hope he heals quickly, mends well, but he's always been known to be a slow healer. So, and he also always, ever since I've known him in the league, Eddie, he's always been the guy that takes the approach, hey, I'm going to get healthy. I don't care what else is going on with anyone else, and it is what it is. So now that he's opted for surgery, he may miss the entire season. Now let's see if the Phillies can hold on. They were not even in the playoffs at this point. They were 3 games out of the wild card, the last wild card. But let's see if that could be something that actually motivates them and hold it down. And maybe he comes back in August and he continues on this MVP pace, which he won't get this year, obviously, because he's going to miss so much time. But just heal up, get well. I'm sure that thumb is going to be bionic once he gets back, and he's going to start raking once again. But it's all Astros right now. So, and of course, the NFL, a lot going on. Well, you have the NBA. You have Kyrie opting in to the $36 million. The Nets did not pay him on a long-term deal, which I don't blame them. But hey, I can't knock him for cashing in on 36 mil. So hey, that's 36 mil at the end of the day, regardless of what you think of Kyrie and how he impacts Kevin Durant's legacy.
Hey, and it's a developing situation,
yes,
as well. There are reports that there are Kyrie trade talks that the Nets are tiptoeing around because they want to make sure that they handle the situation between KD and Kyrie. They handle it in a way where they're not rubbing them both the wrong way. They end up with no Kyrie, no KD, and all of a sudden it's a Rockets dream scenario where all of a sudden all these pick swaps that they own from Brooklyn are looking to be pretty good if both those guys pack up suitcases and head out of town.
Yeah, and you know what? It's real. And at the end of the day, I do not blame the Nets for taking the position that they did. They did not acquiesce to Kyrie's demands. Now, obviously, like you just said, Eddie, they do not want to lose both of those guys or either one of those guys.
You almost feel like they have to trade Kyrie.
Well, at some point, and that's just it. This may just be a stopgap for right now the fact that he's opting in. They still may trade him at some point. They're going to see how it plays out. Excuse me. They're going to see how it plays out at the end of the day and how things unfold when the season starts. If he's going to be all in, if he's going to stay healthy, if he's going to be the team player. We all know about his talent. I mean, that's not any question about his talent, even though I've said some things about, I still think he may be a tad bit overrated, but make no mistake about it. The guy is going to go out there and put up 25 to 30 points a game, sometimes give you more than that. Sometimes he can be a bit inconsistent, but I just never liked him as a team player, someone that makes his teammates better. But at the end of the day, like I said, hey, kudos to him for opting in on 36 mil, so I'm not here to bash Kyrie today. I still think KD, at the end of the day, was a bit too loyal, and now you're seeing that KD, yeah, at the end of the day, depending on what happens this upcoming season, and if the Nets don't do what a lot of people expect them to do, I mean, hey, the jury's going to be out on whether or not KD wants to trade or not. I mean, but I tell you this, man, Kyrie has put them in this particular situation. I mean, the guy has been suspect from the start, in my opinion. Ever since that championship with the Cleveland Cavaliers, he has not been a winning player, in my opinion. So I don't blame the Nets for taking the position that they did, even though they're still in a position where they have Kyrie. You're going to see what you get from Ben Simmons now, and you're going to see what you get from KD. Of course, you know what you're going to get from KD. But as far as Kyrie is concerned, this should motivate him, Eddie. This should motivate him to actually have a great season, play every game, don't miss a week or two because you're saying that you need some mental time off or this or that. So this is going to be a situation for him because if he wants that long-term contract, so he's going to have to be in a prove a year. That's what the Nets are saying. Prove that you want to be here. Prove that you can still be the player that we think you can be. Prove that you can be a player that can be a part of a team that builds chemistry and that has chemistry, and that you can be a part of a winner opposite LeBron James, and then we'll talk about this long-term contract after this season. So it's a win-win for all parties, in my opinion. I know Kyrie still wants a long-term deal, but now he should be motivated to go out and prove his worth.
We'll see about that. I think you know what you're getting with Kyrie, and that's where this whole thing kind of hinges on. I believe it depends on what can the Nets get back for Kyrie Irving, and can they find the right suitor. I think the team that really would like to have Kyrie, maybe a dream scenario for them is to like reunite LeBron and Kyrie in LA, but it's just not going to happen.
No, it's not going to happen.
Maybe the Clippers can make something like that happen, but they seem to have found somebody in John Wall who's going to fill, a need for them as a ball handler and a guy who can run the offense.
I like that move.
After a buyout from the Houston Rockets. But make no mistakes about it, Kevin Durant is not going to sit back while Kyrie gets shipped out of town for a bunch of picks that are going to come around who knows when, while they try to recoup what they lost in the Harden trade.
Yeah, and Eddie, like I said last week, okay, at the end of the day, not to get too much into the Kyrie KD dynamic once again, but since we're talking about it again, it's only KD's fault for pretty much allowing this. I know Kyrie is his own man and he's going to make his own decisions, but I just think that Kevin Durant has backed them way too much in a situation where he is in the prime of his career, the heart of the prime of his career, even at the age of 32, and you let this guy do what he did to pretty much hold you guys back. Now you don't have Harden in town. So it's only KD's fault for allowing it to some degree.
Look, and here's the thing. I was talking about this with somebody over the weekend. The players take a lot of blame, and don't get me wrong, they're the guys that are out there on the court. They're the faces of the team. They're what we see. They're the product. Yeah. But this falls like on Sean Marks. This falls on the front office because they knew what they were getting into when you bring the likes of James Harden, Kyrie Irving, and Kevin Durant. While the superstar that he is, nobody's really called him a leader. He's said to be thin-skinned. There's all kinds of issues with Kevin Durant as far as how he could mold with these guys. It was an uncertainty. We knew it was. And they brought these guys in, and it didn't work. So I don't get mad at Kyrie because he did Kyrie things. That's what Kyrie Irving does.
You get mad at the
you got to get mad at the organization because they gambled thinking that they could make it work, and then they didn't really implement anything to make it work. They just threw him out there and hoped that it would work. Let the players govern themselves, and that didn't work. Right. They never were on the court at the same time together.
Never.
And that was a huge problem. This thing never got off off the ground with the Nets. But
and I still blame
to
that
me,
on Kyrie.
even though I wouldn't want Kyrie on my team,
Right.
and you know, I've had my issues with Kevin Durant, as great a player as he is, and
Kevin
all
Durant
the
needs
others.
to stop tweeting random people.
Hey, there's all kinds of issues
That's
with when you
thin
talk
skin.
about him being thin-skinned. That is one of the issues.
Everybody that says something to him, he tweets back and all
And-
this. Stay off Twitter, whatever.
That's a problem if you're supposed to be a tough, hard-nosed leader of a team. I think about a guy like Steph Curry, a guy who lets
Clap back every now.
a
and
guy
then.
who lets stuff like that just roll off his back. I
Yeah.
mean, they've got stuff to say about his mom. They got stuff to say about his dad, Steph Curry.
Oh,
you
I
know,
love
but
Steph.
but you know what I mean.
Steph.
As a leader,
Love Steph,
he
yeah.
lets the
Love
noise
Steph.
roll off his back. Where you know Kevin Durant, it's like he hears everything that's said about him.
Stay
And
off social media.
you can't live in that world
Stay
if
off
you're
social
one of
media.
those guys. But how it pertains to the Nets and for their future, it's not looking good. And I don't know how if they've learned anything from what we've seen, what we've done here, you know, covering the Houston Texans here in on the sports court, looking at the Aaron Rodgers situation. If we've learned anything, Greg, they better have Kevin Durant on speed dial, have him in the meetings, discussing the trade with him. If you want to keep this guy on your team, if that is your last saving hope of being a relevant team for the next 5 years to 10 years, whatever it may be, then you need to have his ass in the meetings. You need to have him involved in this because you cannot afford to lose this guy if you're New Jersey. This is, like I said, the dream scenario for the Houston Rockets, where they gambled and bet that, hey,
And like I said,
that ship that's a house of cards over there.
That's my point.
And it's going to fall one day.
That's my point about KD.
And here we are with
right
8
there.
years of picks.
That's my point about KD right there. You said everything that I'm saying right there about him. If he's thin-skinned and some random person tweets about him and he's going back at them, some random person that he doesn't even know. Now I can see if it's one thing where you want to clap back at somebody that's in the media every now and then, even though you shouldn't even have to do that. I mean, do you? But at the end of the day, if you're that guy where you're that confrontational, confront the guy that's really impacting your legacy by not being on the court for you and not being there. If that's supposed to be your guy, that's the guy. That's why I've always said, because exactly what you said. KD, he doesn't seem like the type of guy that would shy away from saying what's on his mind. And, you know, I get it to some degree. I don't get being on Twitter all the time and tweeting back every time somebody tweets at you or something. I don't agree with that. But if you want to clap back every now and then and pop your collar, that's cool. But if you're going to be that guy, if you're that type of guy to where you have no problem whatsoever with telling someone how you feel, why haven't you told Kyrie how you feel? And I don't think he has. I think Kyrie hoodwinked him to the degree of, you know, hey man, we're good, blah blah blah, we're cool. And I think he disarmed KD. And yeah, I hear people say, well, KD, he's not confrontational and he's going to lead by example and all this and that. I just think in a situation, all this has come to fruition about Kyrie not even getting a long-term extension because of his own actions. He's not a team player. He's not a winning type of player. He doesn't build chemistry. Now he's on a 1-year deal, a prove-it deal, and that's his fault, not KD's fault. And if anything, the organization probably should have known as well, like you say. I mean, in retrospect, it's good to sit here and say that right now. But what they saw was a tremendous talent that KD wanted to play with, even though Kyrie was there first. KD wanted to play with. Now you have Ben Simmons. And they were looking at it from a talent perspective, thinking that maybe, okay, whatever he does off the court, maybe as long as he's producing on the court and can get us a championship, oh well. You know, at the end of the day, it's all about those chips. But when you're not out there playing, I mean, you can't sit here and make the Brooklyn Nets pay you a long-term max deal when they have no trust in you and what you're going to be, not only to your teammates, but just to the organization as a whole and to yourself. I mean, do you want to go out there and earn this $36 million and show that you deserve a long-term contract? Okay, that's why they said at the end of the season, that's the type of guy we want. So I don't blame the Brooklyn Nets at all for not acquiescing to his demands. I mean, if he would, it was only the Lakers that were interested, and who knows what would have happened right there. Now, that would have been an interesting dynamic with him and LeBron. I think LeBron is one of the few guys that could probably keep him in check to some degree, because like you said, I don't think Kevin Durant, I don't think he's going to really challenge Kyrie man to man, but he'll challenge someone in the media, but he won't challenge Kyrie man to man. And I think Kyrie realizes that, and he took advantage of it. And now it's a 1-year prove-it deal. And we'll see what happens, man. But
And
at
look,
the end of the day, again,
man,
at the end of the day, Kyrie is still winning.
Let's be real though. The Lakers, they don't really have the assets to
They
make
don't.
that trade.
They do not.
It's
I
not
agree.
going to happen. I mean,
So that wasn't going to be.
it's
So that's
pie
an
in
interesting
the sky,
dynamic.
you know, it's
That's
just-
part of what makes it an interesting dynamic.
Yeah, I just don't know. There's just no way they could even pull it off. But if they
and they're not
could, it
gonna
would
pull
be
it off
cool,
now.
I guess, because maybe there's an
Well, let me ask you
opportunity
this.
for Kyrie to revive his career. And then I'm also curious to see, where's LeBron James' career is going. He's obviously productive,
Mm-hmm.
but we're used to seeing LBJ playing
check
at
this
the
out.
end of the season, and
Yeah,
that just
yeah.
hasn't been
And
the case outside of the bubble.
Well, you know what, Eddie?
over the last several years, and
Right.
and
last year in particular.
and if it's not going to happen in LA, then
Well, let me ask you
where's it
this.
going to happen at? And
Well, let me
with
ask you
all
this.
this Bronny talk, coming up.
well, let me ask you this.
What side of the
Speaking
we
of
know
Kyrie,
he's on the
let me ask you this
downside
though.
of
Let me
his
ask you
career.
this. Right.
How much
Speaking
longer?
of that dynamic with the Lakers, of course it's not going to happen now because he's opted into the contract. So, and he wasn't going to play for $6 million. I mean, and that's the only team that was actually interested in him. But again, I agree with you. The Lakers, they don't have the roster, the team around them. It would have been interesting in the fact that you have Kyrie, who would have been an upgrade over Russell Westbrook, in my opinion, at this point. We'll see where Russell Westbrook, who opted into $47
Well,
million.
you
Can
have
you blame
to know
him?
if there was a trade.
But they
the
don't
first
have
thing
no
they would
other
say
money.
is, "We do not want Russell Westbrook back in the trade." Sorry,
about it is-
not sorry. We don't want Russ back.
Yeah,
that would be the
hey,
first
man.
thing.
And you know what?
Look,
I
we
hate
can
to
talk,
say that.
but we don't want Russ, and that would just shut it down for the Lakers. They're like,
Hey, man,
damn it, we can't
think about
pull
how
this
we're
off.
sounding right now about Russell Westbrook, one of the greatest players of all time. And I hate to bash on Russell Westbrook like that. Maybe last season was an aberration. Maybe last season was a fluke. And maybe this upcoming season, Russell Westbrook, you have Darvin Ham in there now. And now I don't know how they would have worked with Kyrie, with LeBron. I mean, but it would have been a talented roster if they all could have stayed healthy. But of course, they don't have the talent around them. And of course, it's not going to happen now because he's opted into the Nets. So that's KD's headache right now. But Russell Westbrook, maybe Darvin Ham at this point, Eddie, he's coming in there. He's preaching defense. Let's get our mindset on the defensive side of the ball. And again, you've heard me say it a million times, and you know this. I mean, you know your stuff. Hey, defense is what wins. So he's preaching defense as of now. Now, do you have the horses on the team to play defense? LeBron will be 38 in December. I mean, so as great as LeBron is, as great as he was last season, even though they didn't make the playoffs, he was still playing at an MVP type of level. At the end of the day, he's going to be 38 years old. So you cannot expect him, if you want to build a team predicated on tenacious defense, you cannot expect LeBron James to be the leader that gets your defense going night in and night out. I mean, you just can't do it. The guy is just not going to have that energy, no matter how professional he is, no matter how much he takes care of his body. He's just not going to have the energy to do that night in and night out.
Especially
Now,
when
Anthony
he's
Davis is
already
going to have to be that guy.
The guy that the offense is going to run
Absolutely.
through. I mean, they've
So Westbrook
experienced
is going to
with
play off the
AD,
ball.
and he's had his games. And
Right,
isn't that
right.
sad to say? He's had his games where he's been able to, take control of the offense, be a dominant offensive force that they can lean on, where it doesn't have to be through LeBron. They can feed the ball inside to Anthony Davis. They can set up plays where they get him in the corner where he likes to shoot from three. But just a few games, and that's it. So the offense is still going to run through LeBron. So ultimately, as much of the load as you can take off of his shoulders on defense is ideal if you're the Lakers. And then you face the cold hard truth of in the playoffs, he's just going to have to bring it, as we say, balls to the wall, offense and defensively for them to have a chance to, really compete.
Right.
in
Now, make
series.
no mistake.
And that's what he tries to make sure he can last for when he activates in the playoffs.
Right. Of course. He tries to preserve himself at this point. I mean, but can you blame him? I mean, the guy is 38 years old, and he's still one of the top 5 players in the NBA, one of the top 3 players when he's healthy.
And the point
Anthony
being,
Davis,
Greg, is that he can do it.
He can
it's just
do it,
you
but you
don't
can't
want him
expect him
doing
to
it
do
all
it.
season
Absolutely.
long. Because
And
if he
with
does
Russell
it all
Westbrook-
season long, he's going to be useless at doing it
That's true.
in the playoffs.
That's very true.
And that's when you need him to do it.
That's very true, Eddie. So he has to pace himself. And I tell you this, Russell Westbrook, he should be motivated at this point. Now, he has that year under his belt with the Lakers where everybody was talking about how he didn't fit in and this and that. Now he has a summer to really focus in and really think things in and really gather himself and realize the things that he has to do to continue to be a great player at this age. For one, he hasn't played the defense like him is talking about. But is he going to have the energy? He's had a lot of mileage on those legs as well. As relentless as he's been, he's never cheated the game. But is he going to hone in on the defensive side of the ball along with Anthony Davis is going to have to be the anchor on that defense at his age, but he's going to have to stay healthy as well. But Russell Westbrook is also going to have to learn how to play off the ball because we all know LeBron James is going to carry the load as far as handling the basketball. So now that Russell Westbrook he really understands his role with the Lakers, and he understands that he's not in OKC anymore, running the show.
Come on, you've got to be kidding me.
Why do you say that?
Because we're still talking about him understanding his role. We had the same conversation before he came to Houston. No, let's be honest. Had the same conversation before he came to Houston.
The sports court, the show where we keep it 100,
you
100%
did say
of
the
time.
same thing. Maybe by now he'll understand his role. Didn't understand his role, okay? And he got ran out of town.
I think he understood it last year. He can't shoot.
At the late, whatever
that's
the
what I'm
issue
saying.
is it is what it is. But we're still having that same talk about Russ, and let's just face the fact that the NBA has kind of evolved around and away from what made Russell Westbrook so great. Imagine if he played in the '80s, man. This guy would have been an all-time great. And not that he's not an all-time great now, but they're always going to talk about how the NBA kind of left him in the dust.
Yeah.
And it didn't help that
he never was able to
his
develop
type
his
of
shot.
play the way he did. Yeah.
Well,
when you start to decline, what helps you out whenever you don't have that quick step anymore?
Right.
The ability to be able to get back and hit those jump shots.
I know.
And
that's what I was saying about Draymond Green
last week. He doesn't have it
week.
really at a close range.
Let me say this.
His close range has deteriorated in the later years. And then
they call him Westbrook, huh?
Westbrook from long range. Did you see where he tried to go at your boy Skip Bayless for calling him Westbrook?
Yeah, I saw that.
He sounded like he wanted to come see
Hey, man, I know. Hey, they have to expect these guys.
That's when you know that deep down inside he knows he's
Westbrook.
Westbrook.
Hey, but you know what though? Again, man. Hey, you have to expect these guys in the media to take shots and do that. Hey, you have to. You go out there and prove it by shooting 3-point shots all summer and working on your 3-point game. But that's why I said, Eddie, you're very valid in the points you're making. Is he going to understand his role? I think last season I don't think he had a problem with this role. See, that's the difference. I think he was actually cool with this role last year. But the fact is, like we're saying,
he just realized they're old as dirt and they suck.
And he can't shoot. So his role as far as being the primary ball handler is not going to be anymore. So like you're saying, and like we're saying,
defend when all you have to defend is the bull rush, basically.
Right.
He's going to go to the cup on you, and that's all he can do.
That's all he can do. So that's what he has to do at a high level
I just feel like those days are gone, and we know they're gone. We know they're gone.
You call it, man, Westbrook, man. That is one of the best nicknames I've ever heard. Westbrook. That is one of the best nicknames I've ever heard. But you know what, man? Having said all that, and I know we're having fun right now.
Talk about the old folks. Why don't we talk about the new wee betters or the youngins?
No, let's talk
NBA.
let's talk about the draft. Let's talk about draft.
And
and I know we're joking about Russell Westbrook, but I think he's going to have a bounce back season. I think he'll be more efficient from three. He's not going to be a Steph Curry by no means, but he's going to have to take the ball to the cup, get to the foul line, play defense, run the break, initiate the break, make smart decisions, and things of that sort. But I think at this point in his career, with him being with the Lakers still, I think he understands what he has to do. Now it's just a matter of just doing it. And again, being more efficient as far as a shooter. Because the Lakers, if they sign Malik Monk back, maybe that helps them some. He's a guy that can stretch the floor with some young legs. I don't know if he's a great defensive player, but they need to find some guys that's going to play some defense. But like you were saying earlier, Eddie, they don't have any money to really – the only thing they can do is sign – guys right now at the mid-level exception.
Malik Monk. Only the most devout of Laker fans are going to buy this and drink this Kool-Aid.
Malik
Monk.
Hey, that's true.
That's who they're depending on.
Now, he can get hot from three every now and then. But
Lakers
I don't think the Lakers are contending next year with the team they have currently constructed. I do think the Kyrie dynamic would have been interesting, even though they wouldn't have the depth.
Some people may
What about the draft, bro?
I'm not surprised. Now, what was a surprise and what came as a surprise, especially to us here in Houston, Paolo Banchero comes off the board number one.
Big time surprise, bro.
Draft. And you know, I was a little bit puzzled by it, but you kind of felt the steam. You saw the odds on Banchero kind of go through the roof.
Well, let me say this right quick before you go on, Eddie. Let me say this. There's a lot of people in Vegas lost a lot of money because Adrian Wojnarowski, he said it was going. He said it was a done deal. You know how many people went and laid that money? Like what? But go ahead.
And you know what? And I think by luck for the Houston Rockets, when we talk about the Houston Rockets, because we knew right then and there. I don't know about you, Greg, but I think we've talked about it at length. We knew OKC really had their eyes set on Chet Holmgren.
Oh yeah. And he was number 2.
The only thing that would have blown up this whole draft completely, and who knows what would have happened, would have been if Chet Holmgren would have been drafted
Orlando.
number 1. They weren't going to go there. They don't need to go there. Apollo Banchero is a much more needed fit for them. Even though I think Jabari Smith probably would have been a better fit. Maybe he has a higher ceiling. But what I'm getting at with the Rockets, they kind of lucked up into getting the best player in the draft, I believe.
Okay, well, I like Chet Holmgren, and to your point about Oklahoma City being locked in on Chet Holmgren. Once I found out that Orlando was going to take Banchero, I said, well, damn, maybe OKC takes Jabari Smith, and then the Rockets get Chet. But then I thought about it before the pick. I said, no.
It was
they're not going to pass on. They're not going to pass on.
They wanted Chet, and Chet wanted them.
That's true.
He wanted to go to OKC more than Houston, so he wanted to make sure he didn't make it any further down the board than 2. And if it was going to be 3, then all of a sudden the phones would have started ringing, and there would have been some trade. Oh, yeah, I think that would have been the case. But let me say this.
As far as think about it. Think about OKC and their second pick. He was actually a guy that's like 7 foot tall who can handle the rock. Think about this. Chet Holmgren was always on their radar, like we're talking about, from day one if Orlando wouldn't have drafted him, which it was obvious that Orlando did not want to draft him, or they were not going to draft him. It was Banchero, or no, it was Jabari Smith from all accounts early on. But OKC, they see a guy, they already lost Kevin Durant, a 6'11", 7-footer, who can do it all, can play like a guard. So, bam, look what falls into their lap. Hey, they have another guy who's a white guy, Chet Holmgren, who can do the same stuff, not at the elite level that Kevin Durant can right now. I'm not saying that. But they see that type of potential in a guy that's 7 foot 7'1". So now since you've lost Kevin Durant, you can bring in a guy similar to that who can also be a tremendous shot blocker and play some defense. So they were sitting there licking their chops at number 2, saying, okay, we missed out on Kevin Durant. He's gone. We had him for 9 years. But now we have a chance to get this other guy that's a 7-footer that has a lot of the same skills.
He does have some. I wouldn't get carried away with the Kevin Durant.
That's why I said that.
But
he's not Kevin Durant yet.
I will say this. He's definitely a lot tougher of a player than his frame says.
Absolutely.
And he likes to bang with the bigs. He understands that it is it's a big guy's world down there, and even though he's thin, he's not afraid to get in there with those guys. Man.
And great competitor.
That's what scouts are looking at.
Right. And think about OKC, they're building a nice roster right now. I mean, you have Giddey, their squad right now is really looking, their projections moving forward, if Chet Holmgren can really pan out to be the player that I think he can be, along with the other draft picks that they have, the other draft picks, I really think that Orlando, they're doing some positive things right now, and their trajectory is looking up. I like the way they're ascending as far as the talent that they're acquiring right now. But I tell you this, as far as Banchero at number 1, I'm going to tell you why they drafted him number 1. And then we'll talk about the Rockets and Jabari Smith. If you look at Banchero, I'm not surprised at that pick. Once it happened, like I said, well, damn, maybe Holmgren falls to the Rockets. But what happened was meant to happen. So it is what it is. Jabari Smith may turn out to be a superstar. Now, is he going to be the next, just a better version of Joe Smith that was a former number 1 pick, or is he going to be in the likes of a James Worthy that can do it all plus shoot the 3?
I think
James Worthy couldn't do.
I think he could be a bigger, better version of like a Jimmy Butler minus some of the attitude issues you get with a Jimmy Butler.
Okay.
This is a guy where you can't find a coach, teammate that has anything bad to say about him. Definitely not a me-first guy. And I'm not trying to rag on Jimmy Butler, but we've seen the issues that him and Eric Spoelstra
course.
have had in Miami. So,
Of course.
I mean, not to get off on a tangent, but
No, you're good.
I'm just using him as an example because also with Jimmy, he surprised us over the last couple of years. His ability to really take hold of that number one role. You look at a guy like Jabari Smith. You see a guy who can be that kind of guy, a two-way player, tough on the wing and at the four.
That's it right there.
And you
can
use
guard
him,
all positions.
Yeah, you could use him to stretch the floor when need be. He shoots excellent outside of three-pointer. I think
Right.
Bruce Pearl was on the radio the other day talking about how he shoots at a clip from behind the three-point line better than anybody in NCAA history at his height.
Well, let me tell you this.
I think
Now,
his
since we're talking about
ceiling's
Jabari
super
Smith,
high,
okay, and then I'm going to talk about Banchero and why I think his ceiling is very high as well. So, like we said, like everybody knew, you can't go wrong with the top 3 picks. So the Rockets, more than likely, they got a superstar. They got a superstar to run with Jalen Green and Sengun. So everything you said, I totally agree with. And now the thing about it is, I actually had Jabari Smith as 3rd out of those 3. Now, granted, I didn't really watch any of his games. Now, I tell you this, once he was drafted by the Rockets and they showed his highlight clip, which I've seen some of his highlights before and everything, I said, wow, yeah, that does look like a guy that can get the job done. But I tell you this, as far as him being a two-way player, I totally agree. And that's a guy that can guard all 3 positions. And if you're the Rockets, that's what you're looking for right now to go along with Jayshawn Tate and some other guys that you have over there. I mean, you really, and Jalen Green, of course, you really want to hone in. That's what they lacked last season, was a tenacious defensive attitude. So now you have Jabari Smith,
exactly what they couldn't get out of Christian Wood.
Right, true.
To get
he was too
Wood.
he was too lackadaisical, and a great talent. He's in Dallas right now, but I agree. Jabari Smith is a guy, and the thing about Jabari Smith that I like, running with Jalen Green and Kevin Porter Jr., why he may be a better fit than either of those guys, he's not ball dominant. So meaning that he's okay with playing off the ball and still impacting the game. So you talked about his 3-point shooting. So now that helps spread the floor. That helps open up things for Sengun down low. Now he has room to operate down low.
And gives him help where he may be a little bit of a slow defender and still developing on that side of his game.
Absolutely. So he helps on the defensive side of things as well. And like you said, in today's game where the 3-point shot is very, very important. I mean, if he's that good of a 3-point shooter and he can even evolve on that, but also what he'll have to do, if he can run, which they say he can do, and if he can pull up in transition and knock down threes, now that's what he's going to have to work on. Instead of being more of a spot-up shooter in the half court, can you get down on transition? I think that's what ultimately set him and Banchero apart as far as Orlando is concerned. If you look at Banchero, now they say he measured at 6'10 and a half without shoes on. So they say he's probably still growing, and you know he's, 255. So you look at Banchero, a guy that can handle the rock. Now, where you lose with Banchero as far as where Jabari Smith may have the edge on him right now is on the defensive side of the ball and being a more consistent 3-point shooter. But with Banchero, if you look at his base, you look at Banchero's base and the way he handles himself, the way he handles his body, the way he dribbles. So Orlando is looking at a guy that can run with Jalen Suggs, and then once you get down after running on the fast break and you get down in transition, he seems like a guy that's more comfortable pulling up from 3, or a guy that's more comfortable coming off a screen and pulling up, because the base that he has, he plays more like a guard with the way he moves. He can handle the rock, and he's only going to get better. Now, he's going to get better on the defensive side of the ball, but I think they see him as more of a fluid player that can do more things, not only in the half court, but also in transition, because of how fluid he is, and he can get any kind of shot he wants at any position on the floor, and it won't be an awkward shot. I think they really see that in him.
I think they saw the most polished prospect in the entire draft. The guy who is already probably closest to what he's going to be. Trust me, still a lot of room for growth, a lot of room to get better, but he's probably a lot closer to his apex than a Jabari Smith, a guy who, man, how old is the guy? Like 19 years old still?
Yeah.
He's still
all
got
these guys
so
were
many
freshmen last year.
So many.
I think Jabari Smith was a sophomore.
I think he came in as I think he's probably one of the youngest.
Or maybe he was a freshman too.
But he comes in. Yeah, he only one year at Alabama.
Okay.
But he comes in with, I think, the ability to grow tremendously. Banchero, you plug him in and you're saying, even if this guy doesn't get any better than what he is right now, we've still got a solid NBA player.
Right.
And so
that can help us win now.
He was the safest pick, I think.
True.
And when you talk about sitting at number one, some teams will tell you got to swing for the guy with the most potential. Other teams will tell you got to go with the
Guy's more ready
safest
right
bet.
now.
Go with that left tackle. It's a safe pick.
Right.
He's going to be good.
Right.
And I think you saw here Orlando, after mulling it around, and who knows what they were leaking to the media and why, they decided to go with what they felt was like the safest pick to make sure with their number one selection they didn't miss. And you can't be mad.
No, you can't be.
But I just thought it was funny. The narrative online and the narrative on social media was that the Rockets felt burnt because Banchero went number one and they didn't get him. And
well, maybe that's motivation for Jabari Smith.
I will tell you this. I feel like, and I know a lot of other Rockets fans that feel the same way. I feel like the Rockets got lucky and they got the guy that ultimately, if they had their choice of all three and they were picking at number one, is the guy they probably would have selected.
Well, I'll tell you this, and you may be right in that regard again, especially since if they're looking to eventually, with Silas, if they're looking to eventually be a defensive team, and in today's game, if you have a 6'10" guy that can guard all different positions, I mean, you look at Draymond Green, who's 6'7", 6'8", and can guard 5 different positions. I think the Rockets, to your point, they're looking at it as, hey, not only on the offensive side of the ball can he stretch the floor, and he can add that space for Jalen Green to operate, get downhill, as well as Sengun to operate down low, so he can be an efficient three-point shooter, but also we need his defensive energy. And the thing I like about
that's
it more
huge.
than anything,
I think that's big too,
his
because
energy as well.
That the motor is the one thing that
Absolutely.
you can't coach.
I
It's
totally
the
agree.
one thing that doesn't
Totally
show up in
agree.
the stat sheet, but definitely shows up in the win column.
Absolutely, man.
And he's going to help out a lot. The Rockets need guys like him. A young guy out there out hustling everybody is exactly what this team needs.
I agree.
And when you talk about building a young core and how they could grow together, you feel like you mentioned, he fits perfectly. And then you almost forget that we're just talking about the first pick in this draft. The Rockets still had 2 more picks, which they turned into Tari Eason and Ty
Defensive
Washington.
players.
Rounding out what was an all SEC first round
Right.
for the Houston Rockets.
I wanted them to get Branham with that 20 from
20
Ohio State. Yeah.
Well, of course, the old Buckeye head. But and I got a little Buckeye tidbit for you later. Whenever we get into the NFL. One of your Buckeyes got paid today.
Okay.
But, this is going to be a really exciting Houston Rockets team to watch. And if Jalen Green takes that sophomore jump that, I think we're all expecting him to make when he showed flashes, scoring, 3, 4, 5 consecutive games, 30-plus points.
Yeah.
And then you add Jabari
Plus
Smith,
making plays for others.
a guy where if his handles get to
That's
the point,
it, Eddie.
if his handles get
That's
a lot
it.
better,
Right.
all of a sudden you're talking about a guy who would have no
That's
question
what I'm talking
been
about that fluidity.
the number one, number one
that,
pick. And it's not
Banchero.
impossible for guys to come in and maybe they're a little bit stiff with their handles. He's
Well,
so
that's-
good at getting his shot
A
up
la
in the air
Andrew Wiggins.
and getting a clean look. His contested shots are still hitting at a clip close to what
Right.
his open shots are
Right.
hitting. So he's not bothered by defenders.
Right.
But whenever he has the handles to create even extra space at the NBA
That's it,
level,
bro.
that's when all those shots he's going to be taking, the percentages are going to
that's-
start to go up.
Right. And that's what I was talking about thinking that Orlando was thinking that Banchero was more of a guy that can do that. He's more fluid in that regard, where he can pretty much get his shot from anywhere.
Yep.
But I agree, though, if Jabari Smith works on his handles, because if you look at Andrew Wiggins, and kudos to Andrew Wiggins for getting that championship ring. Again, kudos to him, man. I really didn't mention that when I talked about Golden State last week, but I'm happy for him getting that championship ring, man, and the way he played. I'm so happy for him. But if Jabari Smith can actually, in which they say with the motor he has, if he actually works on that game, that part of his game as far as the handles, and gets better to where, like you're saying, that he can create and do things like that to add to what they already have as far as that youth and athleticism on that team, oh, man. But that motor and his ability to play off the ball and not needing the basketball all the time, and, of course, he's going to be a rebounder and things like that. So, again, man, the Rockets came up, and you can't go wrong with any one of those 3 guys that went in the top 3. Of course, you had Jaden Ivey. You had
Well, let me ask you this. What did
went
you
5?
think about the Kings passing on Ivy and going with Murray? I mean, I like Murray. He's
Yeah,
a good player.
Keegan
but
Murray is a good
I feel
damn
like
good player.
Jaden Ivey there at
He's going to be
4.
special.
I know we call this a
Well, you know
3-player
what?
draft, but outside the 3, I almost felt like Jaden Ivey was a lock to go.
I did
number
too.
4.
And the thing about it is, I thought he would run well with De'Aaron Fox. But, in today's game, whether it be basketball, football, or baseball. Pretty much the athletes pretty much rule, and if they say they don't want to play for a certain team, the team is more hesitant to draft them. I mean, they could have actually drafted him and said, well, whatever, you're coming to play for the Sacramento Kings. I'm sure over the summer you'll get over it, and I'm sure once you get here, the guys we have on this team, you will be happy. So, but the Sacramento Kings, because Jaden Ivey and his mom and his camp pretty much stated that they did not want to get drafted by the Sacramento Kings, I think that's why they passed on him more than anything, thinking that he was going to be someone that was disgruntled, and I don't think they really wanted to deal with it. So they felt the safer
his
pick
ass anyway.
That's my point.
And told Detroit,
that's my point,
if you
bro.
want him, you're going to give me a little sweetener or something
huh?
and then we'll swap.
Yeah,
you know?
Exactly, man. I mean, come on, bro.
And
you
hey,
cannot pass on a talent like that.
That's another thing that I left out of the talk when we were talking about Banchero. I can't believe I left this out, but
Good.
I also feel like, now I know that we talked about all the reasons that we thought why it was a wise move for them to select Banchero with the number 1 pick. I also believe that they maybe thought that the Houston Rockets really coveted Paolo Banchero, and they were trying to get the Rockets to trade up to number 1. And the Rockets were probably not buying it. Like, we know you're going to draft Jabari Smith. You're not going to draft Paolo. Why would we trade you anything for this guy? And then the Magic called their bluff and went ahead and picked the guy.
Check this out.
Hey, but you know, I wouldn't put it past him because, you know, we talk about how closely these prospects are to each other. So you're not feeling like you're certainly not going to feel like you're losing out on somebody if he's going with one over the other.
Right.
But I
these
think
top 3 picks are interchangeable.
it's pure speculation, but I think that had to have played a factor in their decision. Like, okay, we can't get Raphael Stone to bite. You know what? We're going to go ahead and take Banchero, and we're going to take the guy that we think the Rockets really want, and we'll see, you know, how much they like Mr. Smith.
That's interesting.
And I think the Rockets are happy with Smith, but you got to give the Orlando Magic and that organization and that front office a lot of credit for letting them hang on the Rockets and making that play.
Hey, I agree. That's very interesting.
That's a hardcore play right
there.
That
really is. And you know what else?
It could end up working out for them big time in the long run. But when you're sitting at number 1, you are the top dog.
You own the cards.
You can do
right
whatever
there.
you want.
You own the cards.
Right.
Yeah, and so
you have what they call the nuts.
Right. And I'm glad you said this, Eddie, because the second pick, when they drafted him. When they drafted Banchero, Orlando, I said, well, damn, maybe Chet Holmgren may just fall to the Rockets. But then again, I thought about it before the pick. I was like, nah, they're not going to pass on. OKC is not going to pass on. There was no way. But check this out, though. They had the camera on Jabari Smith, right? So right before the second pick, he did something with his phone like this, and he showed his mom or somebody that was sitting next to him. I think it was his mom. He showed him the phone. I said, he's getting a call from OKC. They're about to draft him. And he did something like he didn't seem too happy, but he showed us something on the phone, like right when they were in the 5 minutes and when they were going to draft him. I said, okay, maybe he's showing that they're saying, hey, you know, we're going to draft him.
That's probably his agent
then, like,
saying, I've got it on good
that,
accord that it's going to be Chet Holmgren here.
That's
so
what actually happened.
Get ready
I thought
to
he
go to
was saying,
Houston.
okay. So that's what I was thinking they were saying, okay, that's the call from the GM from OKC. And so I say, well, damn. And then your boy got up there. He says, select Chet Holmgren. I say, damn, I thought he was going to fall to the Rockets. But, hey, Jabari Smith, you can't go wrong with that. I look forward to him coming to Houston and being a superstar to go alongside of Jalen Green.
Now, have you heard the nickname that spawned out of OKC, you know, with their –
The Rockets need a veteran presence, though, bro.
And you know, they still have EG. I like EG. I think he's a solid veteran presence. When he's on the court, I think that he's.
But in the locker room, on the defensive side of things, setting the tone.
Ultimately, they would rather just let these guys figure it out on their own.
Well, that's obviously what they're doing.
And see which one of these guys really just sort of organically develops into the leader and the face of the franchise.
Okay, face of the franchise. Well, yeah.
You could still be. I mean, even if you're not
I'm
the
talking
best
about
player, you could still be the face of the franchise.
That's true.
I mean, think about Jordan Alvarez is, I would say, the best player in the Houston Astros, but the face of the franchise is Jose Altuve. Before we get off on that, we still got a little bit more NBA
That's what's up.
And Houston Rockets talk.
Okay.
Let's go a little bit further down the draft a little bit.
Okay.
What did you think about? I know a lot was made out of by Stephen A. and Spike Lee. But you have a big issue with what the Knicks did in this draft, ultimately not coming away with a player, but but getting multiple picks in the future,
Do I have an issue with it?
or do you
No.
see that it was a bad move by them?
I think it was a bad move.
Yeah.
I think it was a bad move. I mean, and I'll say this. It's kind of funny because as much as I love Stephen A, man, I mean, I love Stephen A. But as much as he rags on the Cowboys, which I don't mind. It's funny. I mean, I actually laugh every time he does it. It's no big deal. But ever since the Rockets played the Knicks in '94, I've never had any love for the Knicks. As much noise as the Knicks fans and Harper, who was on the team at the time, what's his name? Not Ron Harper, Derek Harper, and your boy Big Oakley and all those guys. I was so glad when the Rockets beat them, man. When the King beat them to shut those New York fans up. I mean, that was some of the best times of my life, man. I was in Columbus at the time. I went back to Columbus, and I was, I still had my apartment and everything with my roommate that was still there. So I went back when I went up there to finish up, and that's at the time where they were playing in the '94 NBA Finals. And hey, man, I used to shut it down talking so much noise about the Rockets, and I was so glad they beat the Knicks. But to your point, no, I don't care at all about the Knicks, and I hope they waddle in mediocrity and mediocrity for many years to come. But in all seriousness, man, I mean, I don't care about the Knicks one way or another, but I don't care that they did that. It's funny, though, to see Stephen A. and Spike Lee. So, I mean, they were just devastated by that because they wanted that. Like Stephen A. said, you're going to draft somebody. I mean, you have a lottery pick. You have to draft someone, and you have to bring them in, and hopefully they pan out to be someone that helps your team right now. You have R.J. Barrett, who's doing some nice things right now. The Knicks have some players. They have some players, but they took a step back last season. But I thought that was funny, though. I thought that was funny.
You know what I thought was funny? There's a new nickname spawned out of OKC with the drafting of Chet Holmgren. They have Darius Baisley. The Thin Towers, they're calling them. Do you like it? Hate it? Love it?
Thin Towers?
The Thin Towers.
Well, I remember Ralph Sampson and the King being the Twin Towers.
Now they've got the Thin Towers.
It's kind of corny, but hey, you know what? It may catch on. I mean, I guess they're saying that those guys are going to be thin for their entire career. So we shall see.
I know that Chet is 7'6", and I may have mentioned this before, but Yao Ming came in incredibly thin for his height and not at the strength of a typical NBA center.
But he had a lower body, though.
I mean, he did, but he certainly was met with a wake up call his rookie season, and then he weight trained and put
Big
on
Shaq
a lot of weight.
quick.
And he went from being a guy that got pushed around to a guy that pushed other people around.
Absolutely.
And
what is it? 8-time All-Star?
It can definitely happen. And Chet Holmgren, the way he works, I don't see him having an issue putting on weight. It's just
I don't think he's going to get pushed around.
You just got to make sure that the
guy.
body and where you take the chance if you're OKC when you try to evaluate these guys is when they put on that weight, does the body hold up to it? Because you look at Yao over the 8 years, he was great, but the feet broke down carrying all that weight and playing on the hardwood.
I agree, Eddie.
So we'll see with Chet, but I think prospects
let me
pick it
back off that right there.
OKC has to be thrilled.
Yeah,
Twin Towers be damned. They're loving it. They're gonna print
Thin
the shirt.
Towers, remember?
They're gonna put it out. There's gonna be Thin Tower shirts.
I just got 4 new tires
on every seat. In the arena over there.
Hey, well, I say this, man. Like I told Brett last week,
Chesapeake Energy Arena, I believe it is.
Right. Yeah. Like I said last week, and OKC, kudos to that fan base, man. They're very, very engaged with the team. Of course, that's the only pro team they have, but that crowd can get raucous. And if they really see that they're on the upswing as far as being a good team again, I mean, they're gonna pack that arena to the fullest, and they're going to be behind those guys, and they're going to really be out to motivate those guys to really get better. As far as Chet Holmgren and his weight, like I was telling Brett last week, I don't think you go in there and you try to make him bulk up, put on 20 pounds. I think you let him grow into his body. The guy is 20 years old. I think you just let him grow into his body. You definitely want to get him stronger. You want to put him on a weight program and a diet that gets him stronger. I love his competitiveness. Yeah, of course. But I don't think you want to put 20 pounds on him, 30 pounds on him here. I think you let him be who he is. He's tough. I don't think he's going to get pushed around. Now, he may not have a choice depending on his weight once he bangs with certain players. But in today's NBA, where the physicality is not what it once was, and people are playing more in space, I think he'll be just fine. A guy that can handle the rock, that can bring the ball up court, can get in transition, can create his own shot. He needs to get better in his mid-range game, really just concentrate on his mid-range game more often. And I think he's going to be just fine. But I don't think he needs to try to, oh, man, let me put on 20, 25 pounds.
No,
Let's get stronger, maybe put on 10 going into next season. Then after that, as he gets older, he's going to naturally put on that weight.
You look at where
and
a
get
lot
stronger.
of NBA teams are going. They're tall, thin,
That's
thinner
it.
centers. Not necessarily the
stretch the
big
floor.
bangers. Now, when
Who can stretch the floor.
those teams that have those big bangers, the Jokic's of the world, the Joker, guys like that who can be that guy.
Absolutely.
Then it adds a different dynamic, and that team has to be built a certain way. But you see a lot of these young teams. You look at the Rockets, you look at the Mavericks, you look at your teams all around the NBA, the Warriors. They've given you a blueprint right there, and that doesn't necessarily say that you have to have a big center that can bang. Maybe you need one of those guys on your bench somewhere that can come off and give you minutes. But
So just think what they're going to
you
look like
can
next
really
year with
take
Wiseman.
it to other teams whenever you've got guys that are agile and can play in space.
Absolutely.
And have length. And,
Absolutely,
and that's
bro.
where the NBA is going. And like you said, Chet's going to be. I think he's going to be just fine as long as he stays healthy. Thin towers, I love it, man. I love
Thin
it.
towers.
I
That's what's
personally
up.
love
That's
it.
what's up. Eddie, so real quick, before I get your take on Deshaun Watson real quick, and Arch Manning, of course, then we'll talk some NFL for a second before we get out of here. Of course, moving forward, now the NFL season, it hasn't started yet. So we're not going to be one of those shows that come in here every Tuesday and spend an hour talking NFL when all we're doing is speculating and really going over the same stuff that everybody else is going over as far as. But we're going to project, and of course, when it gets closer to training camp, we're really going to turn it up a notch and really talk a lot of NFL. But hey, I'll tell you this, Eddie. Let me ask you. For one, the Astros, I thought they probably had a good chance to sweep the Yankees, which they didn't. 2-2, which you can't feel bad about that. I think the bullpen was gassed, but now you're without Brantley. What does that do to the Astros' chances? Now, they have the Mets tonight, but I like what the Astros were able to do. They pitched that no-hitter, but you can't let Aaron Judge walk off on you 2 times like that. But if you really look at those games, all 4 of those games, the Astros, if the Yankees, as great as they are right now this season, they look like the team to beat in MLB, having a tremendous season. I'm talking about on a record pace. The Astros look like the better team in that series.
They did, and the Astros clearly came in with a chip on their shoulder. Their pitching right now is reaching an all-time high. I think you look at the development of Christian Javier, and he is a absolute treat to watch on the mound, and knowing that he's almost like, you feel like he's a homegrown guy for the Astros. They've stuck it with him. They've put him in multiple difficult situations. I think always knowing that ultimately he is a starting pitcher, and he's definitely capable of having a spot in that rotation. It's just there's just been such a plethora of good pitching here for the Astros when it comes to starting pitchers that sometimes that spot just hasn't been there for him, and he's had to play rescue, a guy to come in, early long reliever, coming in after a guy gets injured or gets beat up in the first or second inning. But it was really nice to see him take what is the most dominant lineup in Major League Baseball and to steal one from old Bill Worrell, just bamboozle him.
Right.
He was very good. The defense was good as well. The Astros were really good throughout that entire series, and it's disappointing that just 2 bad, or you could say good at bats for the Yankees ultimately led to a split in a series that you feel like the Astros probably dominated.
They did dominate.
But when you look at the Yankees and who they are, that's what makes them such a great team, because they have that guy. They have a guy who's like what Pujols was for the Cardinals back in their heyday, a guy who can change the game with one swing.
He's going for a new contract too.
Any time, in the game, and I mean with utter dominance.
All rise.
I mean, and the Astros have that same guy in Yordan Alvarez.
Right.
You could pit the two against each other. Right now, Judge is just at an all-world level where he's playing, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that the Yankees are sending him to arbitration. But I think you got a peek in the crystal ball, looking ahead down the road, in the early fall, when we talk about October,
Mm-hmm,
I think you got to peek into what the ALCS is going to look
Absolutely.
like with these two teams, and it's going to be one hell of a matchup.
I agree. And what I like about it more than anything, as far as that peak that you're talking about that we were able to get this past weekend, I like the Astros' chances, even though the Yankees are having a record type of season and everyone is projecting them, they're going to run away with everything in the World Series championship. Again, after watching that series, I think the Astros look like the better team. Now, granted, it's only June. It's soon to be July. I mean, so it's early. I don't want to get too caught up in the moment, but I like what the Astros were able to do in that regard. Going into New York and looking the way they did, again, they let a couple of games get away, but that's baseball. I mean, if was a fifth, we'll all be drunk right now. So the Yankees and Aaron Judge, they were able to get those two victories in dramatic fashion. So, hey, I mean, at the end of the day, the World Series, if you hit a walk-off home run and you win a World Series, I mean, who cares who dominated the series for the most part or who looked like they may have been the better team? At the end of the day, if you win in dramatic fashion, you win. So it is what it is as far as that. But the Yankees are a great team. The Astros are a great team. So I really, again, I'm all in on the Astros right now. I've always been all in on them. But again, now since there's no other team for me to really root for because of my favorite player, it's all Astros from here on out, man, and I wish they get the job done. So Brantley is out on the IL for about 10 days at least. But the thing about that, Eddie, they have such a comfortable lead right now. You let him get healthy. You don't want to rush him back right now.
No, you don't want to rush anybody back, especially whenever you've got the Astros hitting the way they're hitting. Bregman has seemed to come out of his slump.
I agree.
Jordan Alvarez is trying to put together a case for MVP. And this is an opportunity for him to kind of show off where his legs are and their strength and development. As, you know, we used to hold our breath when he was running around the bases, you know, rounding third, thinking that, you know, at any time those knees or something could blow. I think he's shown, you know, this season that, hey, those legs are actually a strength of his. He actually has a little bit of speed.
Mm-hmm.
He has more wheels than you think, and he's not afraid to use them. We've seen him, you know, kind of show them off here in a couple games, blow through a stop sign here and there, and make things happen with his legs. Now I think he's going to get an opportunity to play the field more with Brantley being out. The return of Jake Myers, though, definitely helps a lot. But you have no Brantley. That's going to be a problem. And then I think Tucker's dealing with an issue too.
Yeah. And, yeah, I mean, again, this is the dog days of MLB. I mean, it's a long season, 162 games. You're going to have some injuries. You're going to have some guys who are going to be sore from time to time, maybe have to miss a week, maybe two for whatever reason. But if the Astros, again, with the lead they have in the division, I think that can afford them some time to get these guys healthy and really make a strong push toward the end of the season with everyone healthy, Brantley back healthy. I don't think Brantley is so important to that team, what he brings as a hitter, especially in the playoffs. You have a guy that's a veteran like that, and we all know hits are hard to come by in the playoffs. For the most part, obviously the competition steps up and the pitching is usually what rules in the playoffs. So you need a guy with that kind of plate discipline in the playoffs and that kind of ability that can hit to all areas of the field and can drive runners in, can move runners, can drive. I mean, you need that type of disciplined hitter in the playoffs to be healthy and to be locked in. So you really want to take it slow with Brantley right now and getting him back. Again, a 10-game lead right now at this point. The Angels are, free Mike Trout. Will somebody please free Mike Trout from the Angels? I know he's locked into a contract, but I want to see Mike Trout in the playoffs before he gets washed up.
I just don't think it's going to happen. But the Astros, sticking with the Astros
obviously
for
not
a second,
10 games out.
They've got the Mets again after sweeping the Mets in a quick 2-game series before playing the Yankees. They've got the Mets again. That's going to be on TBS tonight.
Right?
Yeah, I think it's on.
Let's go,
right
Stros.
now,
Let's go.
Early in that one. But also, I want to share a little tidbit.
What's going on early in that one?
I don't have the score here. I'll pull it in just a minute.
Okay.
But I wanted to share an early little tidbit.
I want you to go to New York in the playoffs, whether it's the Mets or the Yankees, and be, who's your daddy?
Well, right now, the Astros have a 5-0 lead over the Mets in the bottom of the fourth.
That's good.
So that one's moving along quickly.
But in all seriousness, Mets having a great year.
I wanted to bring up, and that's just another sign of just how tough and just how good this
the
Astros team
thank
is.
Thank you.
And, you know, we're just not hearing a lot about, you know, number one after he's left Carlos Correa, that the ability of this fan base, this team, this organization to walk away or let go some of the biggest stars and then still find a way to still be a dominant force
Right.
in the league and replace them. And look, even
With a great young player.
Pena's had some really good times. He's had some
Yeah.
downs. He's had some downs. You know,
Right.
he's
But so
dealing
did
with
Correa during the
and he's
regular
dealing
season.
with in spite of injuries, issues here and there. The
Mm-hmm.
Astros have still been able to continue on this sort of tear they've been on
Yeah.
after starting the season slow. But Greg, I wanted to share a quick little tidbit that I thought was kind of funny.
Okay.
From the Yankees Astros series. So Fansided has an article out and a report about current Astros executive but former New York Yankee, Mr. October, Reggie Jackson.
That's my guy there, man. I love Reggie.
You didn't know this. I'm sure most of you do, but Reggie Jackson works in the front office for the Houston Astros in New York. Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Oh, you didn't know that?
No, sir.
Yeah. So
Thanks for that, bro.
so
That's my guy, man.
Reggie
Love
Jackson
Reggie,
in New York,
Reggie.
hearing fans heckle and talk about Jose Altuve, and one of them said, the article, let's see, I'll bring it up, quoted here, says, "I hate that little sawed off SOB." To which Reggie Jackson replied,
Oh my God.
"He's my favorite player, so you should just be quiet."
Whoa.
And
Red's doing it like that, huh?
the guy asked, "You're Reggie Jackson, aren't you?" And he goes, "Yeah." And after that was the end of the conversation. So
What can you say?
Hey,
That's Reggie.
Respect,
That's it, bro.
In New York, Reggie shutting down some of the haters.
He works for the Astros?
because yes, he does. I think that
I thought he worked for the Yankees.
I think
actually.
we've all thought that
Okay.
if anybody
He's
got
just
kind of
affiliated with it.
the brunt of a lot of the hate, and maybe it wasn't as deserved as some of the other players, you'd have to say it's Jose Altuve. So it's nice
Yeah.
to see an all-time great come to bat
Have his back.
for what ultimately is another all-time great and a future Hall of Famer in Jose Altuve.
There it is. There it is. Grade A media, grade
You're
A
Reggie Jackson,
radio.
aren't you?
Yeah.
Yep.
I know, right?
Enough said.
Skrilla Real in the building. Grade A media, grade A radio. Hey, you listen to the Sports Court. I'm Greg. That's Eddie. The show where we keep it 100% of the time. Hey, Skrilla, what's up, man? Hey, what those Heinekens at, bro? I said, what those Heinekens at? I'm messing with you. Hey, check this out, Eddie. I want to get your take real quick before I get your take on Arch Manning committing to UT. I want to get your take on Deshaun Watson. You haven't been in here. I want to give you your kudos. I mentioned it last week. You've always said that it will probably at some point be in his best interest to settle. So now that he's settled and he's still not out of the woods yet, now he had the disciplinary hearing today to the initial hearing by the NFL to see what they're going to do as far as the suspension. So the initial hearing was today as far as this disciplinary actions are concerned and what they're going to do as far as a possible suspension. And NFL is trying to get 1 year. I think that's what's going to ultimately happen. Again, like I've always said, when it involves women to this degree where you're degrading women, I just think the optics of it, if anything, is going to make it to where he's going to get that year. But what's your take? I don't have too much to say about it.
Do you remember when I mentioned
my stand stands the same?
Do you remember when I mentioned that I thought it was a possibility that the NFL pursued a Josh Gordon type punishment, an indefinite suspension, which if you do everything that you're supposed to do and you're a good NFL player, then after 1 year you can apply for reinstatement and they'll reinstate you, or they'll say, okay, well maybe you had with him maybe you had this failed drug test, you had this, that, and the other, so we're going to extend your extension. That's what they're pushing for with Watson. They want an indefinite suspension that is at least 1 year long, allow him to apply for reinstatement at the end of the year.
Do you think missing last year, you don't think that – I don't think it's going to play into the
No,
NFL's thinking.
I don't think that. I don't think
fair?
it's going to play into their thinking at all because Deshaun Watson ultimately chose that he didn't want to suit up for the Houston Texans.
That's
the
true.
Houston
That's
Texans
true.
just obliged
That's
he
true.
wanted.
That's true. That's
so
true.
you can't now double
That's a
dip
good
and
point.
say, hey, I sat out because I already knew y'all were going to punish
That's
me
true.
for doing something wrong.
That's true.
No, he sat out because he wanted to be traded, and now he's gotten his
Right.
wish.
I got you.
Now he's got to deal with what we knew. Ultimately, we knew he was going to have to deal with. We just weren't sure how severe it was going to be. Settling, what was it, 20 of the cases, I think was huge because you kind of get down as much as, quiet as much of the noise as you can, and you can really focus on fighting these 4 cases and then go from there.
Here's what I say. Yeah, right. And here's what I say to that without really delving too much into it once again. If I'm Deshaun Watson, I wouldn't dole out another damn penny. Period. You were not found guilty or not charged in criminal courts. Now you've paid 20 women their money again. And I'll say it again, and I'm gonna keep saying again because I've repeated this time and time again when we've talked about Deshaun Watson. If he's guilty of these alleged accusations, then he should be reprimanded for it. So the NFL is going to make sure that they do what they do. My feeling stands the same on it, and I'm going to leave it at that, and I digress. But they paid him a lot of money and he's taking care of a lot of women in that regard as far as money is concerned, and I'm sure your boy Busby, he's like, yeah, I got him. I won. This is exactly what I wanted, blah, 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 blah. And okay. I think Deshaun Watson, I thought that he would ride it out because he wanted to clear his name. But to your point, maybe it's best for him because you don't want things to come out now, whether it's true or not. You don't want things to come out now that's really degrading and even degrading your character even more, even though what's said has already been said. But at the end of the day, I would not dole out another penny. You paid them enough money. Whoever didn't get in on that, in my opinion, ass out. And I hate to sound like that.
Ultimately, I mean,
because in my opinion, I think it's just a money grab for the most part anyway.
It's probably not going to be up to Deshaun Watson. It's probably going to be up to a jury. It looks like these things aren't going to get settled, these final cases. And then there's reports that there could be up to 6 more coming out. I don't know.
Of course.
We'll see. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. I will say this. I know
y'all got 250,000.
There are people that come out that are still in Deshaun's camp. And, I was in Deshaun's camp for a long time. I will say this about Deshaun.
He was stupid
he's
though.
Learning
too.
Exactly. He's got to be learning a very valuable lesson. Let's say he is 100% not guilty of any sexual assault or any type of anything like that. I don't even know. The legality of it is so gray. That's what makes it so hard for them to prosecute and stuff like that.
I'm just talking about the totality of it. I'm not saying he's a saint.
Let's just say he is. I mean, at the very least, he has to understand he was acting so irresponsibly that, there's only one outcome that could have come of all this, and this is what it is.
Right, that's
true.
If
he had anybody that was
you can't put yourself
really
out
in
like
his
that,
corner.
bro.
Yeah, like Deshaun, go pick a girl
can't
up
put yourself out there, man.
who's out, looking for somebody else. You don't go, prey on a woman who's trying to perform a job, because I'm sure there were plenty that were into what Deshaun was into, but all it takes is one who's not, and you got a whole world of trouble, and
that's what happened.
He's living in it now.
Hey, man, and you know what? I totally agree.
But he's going to be gone for an entire season.
I think so.
I think so. The question is,
I think so.
When that season is up, is he going to have settled all these cases? Are they going to be tried and done? Are there going to be new cases? Or is there going to be something that happens, or the way these cases play out in the court, is there going to be something that forces the NFL to extend his punishment even further? And this is where you feel like the Texans come out smelling like a rose, even though they have now been named in their own separate lawsuit for enabling Deshaun Watson. And it's kind of funny, the whole thing hinges on, ultimately, what is Deshaun Watson guilty of doing? Yeah. So we'll see what happens with that case. He
wasn't charged criminally.
Well, this is why despite all the speculation, this could go either way, but you kind of felt like the way this whole thing was going, with the way the Trevor Bauer situation went, you kind of knew that the NFL couldn't be the one organization that sort of takes it easy or just gives a slap on the wrist.
That's why I said from day one, he's
guy.
going to get a suspension.
Of all the times, not
even
there's any good time
in that
to
situation.
do this, but of all the times, it's the worst time for anyone or any athlete to do something like this, because they're going to face the harshest punishments that have been doled out from the likes of the people who run the league. That's the position he's in. But he's fortunate, Deshaun Watson. If I was him, I would just settle as many of the cases as I could. That way, there's no.
That's what you say.
There's not going to be crying women taking the stand, making you look terrible. Get that part of the deal behind you. Sit out your punishment, and then start building. Do damage control. Start building your reputation back, one brick, one pass, one play at a time.
So
by
you're
just
saying
accepting defeat, accepting that
he's done that in 20 of the cases.
I wasn't guilty of this, but saying, hey, I was guilty of living a lifestyle that maybe was not indicative of what a franchise quarterback
That's true.
should be living. And this is where I'm making my change.
Just the
and I'm
optics
making my
of it.
change because I made a commitment to the Cleveland Browns, who also made a commitment to me, Deshaun Watson, and that's his best bet to sort of rebuild
So just
his
pay off the
rep.
rest of them. So
That's
anybody,
it. That's the only way I think it's going to happen.
So
because
you're
if you
saying
keep butting your
anybody
head against the wall,
But see, the thing about that
you're
is,
never
though,
going to be able to please
Yeah.
the naysayers. You
But
already
see, but
lost
that's
the
my
court.
point.
You already lost the court of public opinion. You're
Well,
not
that's
going
true
to win
too.
that back.
That's in a lot of people's eyes.
just
I
not
mean,
gonna
I'm one of the
happen.
guys who doesn't believe that all of this is legit. I'm also one of the guys who believes that maybe some of it is. I say I don't think all of it is legit, but I don't think the totality of it. So that's why I'm saying at
But
this
you
point,
know, people like to see humility,
That's
Greg.
what-
Like, I
true,
mean,
true.
Then they'll be like, okay, well, because think about Michael Vick. I mean,
Well, he
I'm a
settled
dog
with
lover
20.
myself, and you think
Yes,
about
you are.
what Michael Vick and what he was
Me too.
in charge
Roo-roo.
of, but you see somebody come out, be genuinely sorry, pay their punishment, come back and rebuild their rep, and understand that what they were involved
But
in
I don't-
was wrong.
I don't necessarily think
It's easy
giving
for
away your money is
well, I don't
always
know
the best
about-
bet
I'm
to
not
do
talking
that.
about give away the money, but just when in the court of public opinion show, or whenever you're in front of a camera,
He's already-
showing humility, showing
He
that
has.
admitting what you've done wrong. That's
He
the only
has.
thing.
He
Deshaun
has.
hasn't admitted doing anything
well,
wrong yet.
Well, he
still
said,
says
well,
he
he's pretty
did
much admitted
nothing wrong.
in the latest interview with the Cleveland Browns. He pretty much said that he admitted to putting himself in that situation. He didn't think that was the right thing to do. As far as I guess he was alluding to the fact that he's garnering all these massages from different women. So of course he feels that the optics of it looks bad and it doesn't look good for his family as well. So he's admitted and he's been apologetic for the turmoil and the vitriol that it has caused people around him, and just the way it looks from a standpoint of everyone else that has to be involved, the Cleveland Browns and everyone that has to answer questions about it, teammates having to answer questions about it. But I don't think he's ever going to admit, again, there's no video.
Right.
So I don't think he's
I
ever going
understand.
to admit complete guilt. But I think
There's
part
a
of
lesson
that,
to be learned here for Deshaun Watson.
Yeah.
And we'll find out if he learns it. And
but just
we'll
think
find
about
out
it. But to your point, if he actually pays everyone that comes out and says, yeah, he did this and did that.
No.
I mean, so they're saying 6 more people may come out and say that. So what? He go 300. I mean, man, I wouldn't dole out another dime right now. You've already taken a public hit like we're talking about. So you have people who either believe you or they don't already. Man, keep the rest of that money in your pocket. Again, if they charge you criminally, then you deal with it like that. But the fact that they have not charged you criminally, I mean, it's your word against theirs. You've done what you can do as far as doling out the money you have. That's enough, man. I mean, you can't just let everybody just come in here and just dig in your pockets like that just because they're saying they're going to accuse you of this.
Well,
that's just my opinion.
That's what happens when you walk into people's apartments with more than just your pockets hanging
with
out,
just-
and
with just a towel on,
That's an
huh?
issue with
Yeah.
Deshaun Watson.
Hey,
and
but me and
I'm
you
just
both
glad
can
it's
agree.
not Houston's issue
That's
anymore.
true. That's true. And me and you both can agree that he definitely put himself in this predicament. So maybe he'll learn from this, and you can't put yourself out there like that, bro,
Now,
young brother.
a couple
Let's
of
roll on,
tidbits
though.
before we get out of here, because we're going to get out of
I'm
here a
going
little
to
bit.
get your take on Arch Manning.
Oh yeah, no, definitely. We're going to talk. That's one of the tidbits we're going to
Okay.
talk about. Arch Manning. While we're on the NFL, I told you I was going to give you a little tidbit.
Okay.
Terry
Shoot for it.
McLaurin reaches a 3-year agreement,
Okay,
an extension in Washington. Think about all the turmoil, around that organization, around that team. But there are some young pieces there, and some feel like that maybe Ron Rivera could get that team to tune out the noise, and maybe they can make some noise in the NFC East. But McLaren, let's see if we can get the details
71, 3 years.
here. $75
Well, the thing about it, Eddie,
million.
while you pull up the details right there, the thing about that,
He'll
former
make up to
Buckeye.
74.04 or 75.04 over the next 4 years.
Okay, former Buckeye. He's a captain for the Washington Commanders. I don't like that name. I mean, no disrespect to that name or whatever and what it stands for. No disrespect at all. But I just think they probably could have come up with a better name than the Washington Commanders. I like the Washington Warriors, even though there's a basketball team
I
called
think the
Warriors.
team was okay, better than the Commanders. I like just the football team.
I got you. That was unique.
Kind of like, yeah.
That was unique. It was different. I agree with that too. So I didn't like that at first, but it kind of grew on me. But as far as Terry McLaurin, former Ohio State wide receiver, and see what it does. You have Carson Wentz in the fold now, Eddie. And so maybe think about Terry McLaurin. The last 2 years, he's had over 1,000 yards for the Washington Commanders. So, and that's on the team that's had quarterbacks. They have not been solidified at the quarterback position. Now
No, you've
you
had
have
the likes
that.
of Kyle Allen.
Right.
Who else? I mean, that's just the name one.
That's just name one. I mean, that's just name one. I mean, then you have the guy that they had. Well, it's been so many. Hell, I can definitely remember Kyle Allen.
Alex Smith.
Yeah,
Some years
at the tail end of his career.
Yeah.
But just think. But to our point, though, think what he was able to do the last. And then his first season, he had 950 something yards, 956 yards, I think it was, on 80 something catches. I think last year, no, on 50 something catches. Then I think last year, I think it was 80
Last
something
year,
catches.
for them,
for
wasn't it
1,000
that
yards.
Heineken guy? Wasn't he the one that was throwing? Taylor Heineke.
Yeah.
Wasn't it
That's
him
it.
that was throwing? Is But hey,
Heineke.
Terry can.
And
make
he's pretty good.
Hey, he's had his moments, but he's also bombed
And
out.
think about Eddie. Think about this too. What he was able to do. Now he's a captain. They say he's a great guy in the locker room as well. So here's a guy that's going to be a leader on that team that already is a leader on that team, and you see what he can do as far. And he was able to do that the last 2 seasons without really a threat on the opposite side. Now you have Curtis Samuel, Ohio State Buckeye, and you have Johan Dotson as well. So now he has some people on the other side that can take the pressure off of him. So I really like the Commanders really doing that and really giving him that deal. So kudos to him for that.
Yeah,
man.
we'll see if
Kudos
they
to him
can
for that.
develop and grow into a dominant defense instead of a bend but don't break, sometimes forced turnover type of defense, which
Real
just
talk.
hasn't been good enough.
Hopefully
for them.
Chase Young comes back healthy as well.
Absolutely.
What do you think about Baker Mayfield?
That's one tidbit. Oh, Baker, that's another long story. We can't. We don't,
We don't have
enough
time. We'll
to
do
get
it next
into.
week.
But
We'll do it next week.
You know, Seattle is definitely in the running.
Yeah.
Carolina's in the running. The only question is who's going to pay what and when are they going to get the deal done?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if Cleveland has made up their mind if they're going to try to go back to the table and maybe see if Baker can come back and play one year. But
if Deshaun
I don't
gets
think they're
suspended
going
for a full
to.
season,
I think
they
Baker's
say it's
already
a
made up his
possibility.
mind and he's done in Cleveland.
So
The
you're
moment-
saying that even if you're saying
yeah, even if Watson's out for the entire year, there's no way
You don't
Baker
think he
gets
reports?
traded. No, Baker
He
gets
pulls the Deshaun
traded.
Watson.
Yeah, he gets traded.
what's the best team, Carolina or Seattle? Now I think Carolina.
It's Seattle for me.
Well, I think Seattle has a tougher division, and you're competing with some great teams in that division. I think Carolina, you probably have an easier path. I mean, you have to follow the likes of Russell Wilson in Seattle. I think with Carolina, you have a better chance of winning more sooner than later because of the division that they're in. I think you go to a team that has a quarterback-driven coach and Matt Rule and an offensive-minded coach,
Yeah.
whereas Seattle. I mean, you
Look,
can't go
that's-
wrong with Seattle.
I got to
as far
be
as
honest.
being
I'm
in
just
Seattle
not. I'm
in their
not
tradition.
sure that Matt Rule 100%
Is the guy.
knows what he's doing at the NFL level
I got
just
you.
yet. This may be
We'll see this
a
season.
learning job for him where he ends up getting fired. Then maybe if he gets another shot, like Chip Kelly did, maybe he could make the most of it. But I just right now, I'm not so sure I want to bank if I'm Baker Mayfield on going there. I go to play for the guy who has the Super Bowl rings, who's built.
He's
an
a defensive
NFL,
guy now.
Who still, but you've seen him build
Yeah, Russell
NFL
Wilson.
teams that are perennial playoff teams. You've seen him do it with the likes of a Matt Hasselbeck and Marshawn Lynch, and you've seen him do it with Russell Wilson and Chris Carson and some wide receivers. I think
Yeah.
that. I think that ultimately
Think about that
Seattle's
division,
probably
though.
where. Yeah, it's a tough division, but
you gotta compete.
You're going to have to compete with those guys
Well, that's
either
what
way.
we're going to talk about. Yeah.
you know.
And, I mean, hey, so we'll see what happens with that.
Now-
I mean, if Deshaun Watson is out of there for a full season, maybe he's hinted that he's not ruling out the fact that if he is suspended for a full season, because what it does, Eddie, it gives him a chance to play for Cleveland again, even though you know that you have one foot out the door.
Yeah. Give
then
them a
you can
chance to
prove
get
yourself.
more for him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and plus you're playing with a
Screw
team
that.
that's talented.
Screw
Hey,
that.
well, he may look at it like, okay,
if it's
I
gonna
go
make,
win with
if
the
I thought there
Browns,
was a chance that there
my
would be
chances
other
are gonna be
teams
better.
that would make like other teams get interested in me, then maybe I'd go and do that. But I think we know that it's pretty much a 2-horse race, and I don't think unless somebody gets hurt, badly, like we're talking about like a season-ending injury or a several-month injury, then I don't think that pool of teams is going to increase.
I got you. Hey,
Now, just a couple more things before we get out of here. Arch Manning.
okay, well, I mean, hey, I'll tell you
He's
like
going
this.
to UT, and we
You've
all
heard
know
me.
that it revolves around
And
a
that's your
couple of
school.
things.
You like UT, don't
I like
you?
UT. I
Yeah.
like A&M too.
Yeah, you do. You do.
But there's a couple of things that revolve around that. Obviously, that
Money.
we're going to hear word being there's
Moolah.
going to be some huge NIL deals.
Yeah.
But also, I think Arch would love to be the quarterback that comes back and brings back that
Texas back to
powerhouse
prominence.
UT football back to Texas. Something we haven't seen from the Longhorns since the likes of VY.
Vince Young, that's right.
And when he was there,
Houston's
2005.
very own Vince Young. Right.
So I'm excited. I mean, how could you not get excited? And then knowing that they're moving on to the SEC, and you think about the battles that are going to be going on between, and
they had a lot to do with it as well.
Young Peyton Jr., pretty much, young Arch Manning on the field,
or Elijah,
battling against
Archie,
Nick Saban, some of the better defensive minds in college football.
Right, and that's just it right there. I mean, it was kind of surprising. You've heard me bring up Arch Manning on this show actually about a month ago. And the thing about it is he passed up the likes of Georgia, who's used to getting what they want at this point, at least the last few years as far as recruiting, Kirby Smart and those guys. Of course, Alabama. So he passed those guys up to sign with UT. And a lot of it is because of what you're saying. Of course, the money that UT has. And the thing about UT in Texas, there's so much, there's no state tax. It's just so many other avenues that you can take being in Texas as far as your money is concerned. So I can't fault him for that. Now, what I will say is what's very interesting is the fact that Quinn Ewers, he's there. And he's the number one quarterback in the class of 2021. Now, Sarkisian, this is all about Sarkisian. I heard my boy Herbie, like y'all call him. When we were at Ohio State, we called him Herb. At least the brothers called him Herb. I think some of the coaches maybe called him Herbie, but we called him Herb. But I heard Herb right after that talking, right after he committed that same day, and he was talking about the situation with UT and the fact that Sarkisian, this is a lot about to do about Sarkisian and the relationship that they've built. I noticed he left out, and I think this was a conscious effort on his part to leave out Quinn Ewers, who just transferred from Ohio State, because I don't think Kirk wanted to rain on the parade of the Mannings in that moment. I think he was just doing that in that moment because we all know how in-depth he is as an analyst, and he probably felt that he didn't have to bring up Quinn Ewers at that point.
But we know they're going to compete.
When it happened. Yeah, so I'm sure at some point he will address that. They're going to compete. Now, if I'm Quinn Ewers, because if you remember, Eddie, back in the day, as far as UT, remember when Applewhite was balling, and then they brought in Chris Sims, and everything, okay, we're going to bring in Chris Sims.
There's a division.
And Chris Sims really didn't pan out to be the quarterback that they thought it would be. He turned out to be a good quarterback. Nothing against Chris Sims. Great analyst right now as well. But will that be the same type of situation? I don't think so. No, I think Arch Manning is going to be a superstar.
This is going to be Texas just, doing what other programs have done for a long time. Hey, you stack the deck at quarterback. And you let these guys compete, and if one moves on, one moves on. But you're going to get the most out of these guys by having them compete. And you're going to figure out which one still has a lot of room to grow and develop and can be that guy, and which one maybe is not quite that guy or not quite there yet. Who's going to have to take a back seat.
I agree. And, with Quinn Ewers, and it's going to be interesting. And I totally agree with that. That's why I wanted to bring this up about Quinn Ewers. I think if you're Quinn Ewers, you go in there with the attitude, you almost look at it like a Montana Steve Young. You're Joe Montana, and they're bringing in Steve Young, even though, of course, Manning has that name and that cachet as far as being a Manning. But if you're Quinn Ewers, if you go in there, you have Xavier Worthy at wide receiver, you go in there and you show and prove this season that you're that guy. Now, what happens if he goes in there and going into his sophomore season, he's a Heisman candidate because UT, even though they went 5-7 last year, but he just helped turn that franchise or that program around like that. And he goes into his sophomore season, and he's actually a Heisman candidate. The reason why he ended up leaving Ohio State ultimately, because, and I said this, remember I called it.
Then you know what's going to happen, right? Then Ole Miss is going to get, a transfer.
Well, that's just the question. And Ole Miss is going to get Manning?
Yeah, then
So do you think Manning would bail? That's the thing.
Well,
so it's going to be interesting.
I don't know.
To see how it
when
plays
you're
out.
Manning, when your name is Manning, I don't think you're going to have to sit behind anybody for
That's
very long.
just it. So that's why it's such a interesting
Quinn
dynamic.
Ewers and all the stars he has be damned. When your name is Manning.
I know. And I like Manning, too. I like his highlight reel. That's why I brought him up on the
You want that name coming through your school and being,
Think about what it does for recruiting.
That as his alma mater. You don't want him to look
I like
back
him
and
at UT,
he was
bro. I really
drafted
do.
out of Ole Miss or drafted out of somewhere else where he transferred to. No.
I like him wearing that
he was
number
drafted
16.
out of UT. The Mannings are now tied to UT forever.
I like him carving out his own path. I like that number 16 in that burnt orange, and I think Arch Manning is going to be a great player. Now, the thing about it, what it also does, it helps in recruiting. You have not Madden Academy. You have the Manning Academy coming up soon. so he can get in some of these skilled players' ears and really talk to them about why they should come to UT. Then you have other passing academies coming up soon. So what it also does by getting that commitment right now you have a chance to really bring in a lot of talent who wants to play with a Manning. So, but if you're yours, you're looking at it like, I'm Joe Montana, you're Steve Young, and you're gonna come in. Hey, you're gonna have to come in here and take it from me. So, but again, when you're coming in with that kind of cachet and with that namesake, Manning, it's going to be tough to hold him off unless you make it to the playoffs this year and you go into your sophomore year as a Heisman candidate. Then maybe you get the Mannings to rethink some things. So it all hinges on Quinn Ewers, but I like the competitive nature. I like Manning for making that commitment, for one, saying, I don't care he was the number one quarterback in the class of 2021. I'm Arch Manning, and I'm going to go do what I do. But, of course, the money has a lot to do with it. But, again, I like him in that burnt orange. It's going to be very interesting to see how that plays out.
Now, we are almost out of time. Another great edition of the Sports Court has come to a close. But before we go,
okay,
I have one last tidbit. How the mighty have fallen. A couple of guys who friends and fantasy owners alike used to strangle themselves over for the opportunity to draft number 1 overall. These guys may have ultimately guaranteed fantasy championships, big paydays at the end of the year, and surely a lot of pain for your friends who had to play against you. These two guys being Adrian Peterson and Le'Veon Bell, guys who used to tear it up in fantasy. Now they'll be tearing each other apart in the ring as both guys have signed a contract, Adrian Peterson and Le'Veon Bell, to fight each other on July 30th in California. Ooh. So get your popcorn ready because these two guys are going to scrap at it. And I'm telling you right now, I got my money on all day, and get at me if you want some action, all right?
Hey, I do too. That's going to be very interesting right there. Hey, hopefully those guys are careful and they don't start suffering some head injuries from this. But that's just that competitive nature. Those guys are still very competitive, and they just want to compete. They just want to compete. So, hey, I can't fault that. It's always good to compete. So kudos to them. Just be careful. That's a whole different level of the game right there, getting your head pounded in. So maybe it's just going to be an exhibition match one time, but they're not going to try to become professional boxers, are they?
No.
Okay, so we're done? Cut it off, man. Oh, we cut off?